Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to build a password generator using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So we'll start with styling the page and then we will work on the JavaScript. So those of you who want to skip the styling part, you can just skip the video to the JavaScript part. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. So I'll open my code editor. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'll name this as password generator. So now within the password generator folder, I'm going to create a file called index.html. Okay, now I need another file, index.css. So this will be the style sheet. Now I need the index.js file. So this is for the JavaScript. Okay, so now let's link all of these files together. So this is a standard template. I'll just delete the unwanted lines. Okay, so now let me open this on the live server. Okay, so now as we make changes, the changes should show up on this browser. Inspect. I'll open the console as well. So now let's link the style sheet. Link, the relationship will be style sheet. Okay. And it's in the same path as password generator, index.css. Okay. So now let me make some changes here to see if the style sheet is connected. I'll change the body background color. So let me change the color to aqua. Okay, so the color changed, which means the CSS sheet is connected to the index.html. Now next, let's connect the index.js file to index.html. So within the body, so here we are going to open the script tags. And now I'm going to link this one to the index.js file. So for this, we are going to use our source and index.js. Now let me go to index.js and see if this JavaScript file is connected to index.html. For this, I'll type in console.log connected. So if this JavaScript file is connected to the index.html file, it should show here as connected. So let me save this. It's connected. So now we have the HTML, CSS and the JavaScript file connected to it. Okay, so now let's get started with designing the password generator. So inside the body, I'm going to open a div. I'm going to name this, I'm going to give this a class name of container. Okay, so all of our code is going to go into this area. So now let's go design the container. So I'm going to let the body, the background color to be the same. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to set the margin to 0. I'm going to display flicks. Display as flicks. Minimum height 100 VH. Align items center. Justify content center. font, oops, and the font family set to sans ships. Okay, so we're done with the body. I've saved it. So now let's design the container. I'm going to design the container. Background color, let's take aqua for now. And height, I will set it to 450 pixels. And width to 450 pixels. Okay, so now we have a container. So now inside this container, okay, actually let's change the color. I don't like this color. So it's okay. And let's set the background color here as well. So let's choose a lighter color for this one. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So I'm going back to the index.html. Let us add items into this container. So the first thing we need is the header. So I'm opening a div. Password generator. So we have this password generator here. Now let's give this a class name. Phead. So now I'm going to design this one. .phead. So inside phead, I'm going to say font weight, bold. Well, let's try bolder. Okay. Phead, this is a capital P. Okay. And a color to white. Okay. Next, I'm going to set the margin left. Margin left, I'm going to set it around, let's try 50 pixels. Let's try 150 pixels. Okay, so now it's the center. So let's add a margin top. So margin top, I will say 20 pixels. Okay, so I want to make this a little bigger. So I'm setting the font size larger. Let's see how. Okay. X large. Let's see this one. Okay, this is good. So now I will change this to 130 pixels. So it stays more in the center. Let's make it 120 pixels. Okay, it looks good to me. Let's do 118 pixels. Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, so now we have the header. So now we need a text box here. So I'm going to add in a text box. This is going to be a div. And now within this, we're going to add in input. Input. Okay, now I'm going to save the type as text. Now let's put the other one. So this one I'm going to type as, we can either add a button. So I guess, okay, let's put a button. So we have this button here. So let's say this is going to be copy. Okay. So now let's, okay, so now I'm giving this a class name. password txt. So this is going to have the class name of password txt, and this is going to have the class name of password copy. I'm just putting CPY. Okay, well, let's make that password copy. Okay, now let's go and style the password to text. Dot password to text. I'll set the height to 50 pixels. Okay, let's set this to 40 pixels and set the width to 150 pixels. Okay, let's make this 250 pixels. Okay, let's make this, let's do 300. Okay, so that's quite big enough. So next I'm going to adjust this button size as well. So index.html, I've given the button the class name of password CPY. So let's style this one. Height, I will set the button's height to 40 pixels. Okay, so that's good. So width to 40 pixels. So now I want this button to be on top of this one, in this area. So I'm going to move the button towards the left. So I'm going to say margin left, and I'll say minus 50 pixels. Okay, so normally when you had 50 pixels it will move it to the right, but now since I'm giving it minus 50 pixels, the right side of margin is moving towards the left at minus 50 pixels. Okay, so now I'll remove the border. I don't want a border, so I'm going to click on none. So that doesn't have a border now. Now let's give it a color, background color. I'll give it a light color. So let's go 49 pixels. Okay. Now this password text, I want this in the center. So margin left, I will add 50 pixels. So let's add, make it 70. Yeah, it looks center to me. So let's add margin top 20 pixels. So let's make this 40 then. Okay, awesome. So now let me adjust this one a little more. So this 49, let me make this 48. Okay, so now instead of this copy, I want an icon here. So I've already downloaded the icon. It's in the downloads, the copy icon. So I'm going to move this into the projects folder and say the password generator. So instead of this one here, okay, now let's have the browser as well. Okay, so instead of the copy text, I'm going to have the icon to copy. So for this, I'm going to add image. So add the image tag. I'm setting the image source. Inside password generator, I have copy icon.png. Okay, so now that has moved a bit to the top. Now let's see, let's try to fix that one. So I'm going to give this image also a class name. Copy icon. Okay. So now let's style the copy icon. Now for the copy icon, I'm going to size it. I'm setting the copy icon size to height to 20 pixels and width to 25 pixels. Or let's set this to 22 pixels. Okay. So the password copy, that is this button area. So let's add height to 50 pixels. Okay. So got the password text and password copy here. So I got password text and password copy here. So this div, I'm going to give this as a class password area. Okay, so now let's style this one. So above this I will do it to keep them organized. So inside this one you can enter. So now I got the password area. So now I have to display it as a flex. Okay. Align items center. Display. Fix direction. Row. Justify content center. Set theme margin to 0. Padding bottom to 2 pixels. Let's set it to 3 pixels. Okay, now that looks good. 57. Okay, so this looks good to me. So let's make this 20 pixels. Pixels, that's too much. Let's play around with this a little more. Okay, so now we have the copy icon here. Okay, so now we need to make few more options below here. So this will be okay. So now let's make the other options. So the next option is going to be, so let's create a div. Now let's put the input. Okay, so now let's enter include uppercase. Now let me put a div here. So I got include uppercase. So now inside this one I'm going to add a checkbox. So this will be input. So I got an input. I'm going to change the input type is equal to checkbox. So I got the checkbox here. Okay, so before this I wanted to also ask how many characters are needed. Password length, and this won't be a checkbox, this will be a text area. Okay, so now this div, I'll give it a class name. Input options. Okay, so I'll give this as well the same class name. Let's see. Now we have to style the input options. Okay, so I'm going to style the input options. So let's say display flex. So now we see it, all of these came in the same line. Previously they were like in different lines, but now they're in the same line. So flex direction will be row. Next, justify content center, or we can do justify content as space between. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so now let's say margin left I want let's say 15 pixels, or let's do 30 pixels. So margin right I want 30 pixels as well. So margin left I've given 30 pixels and margin right I've given 30 pixels. Now color I want white. Okay, let's keep a color black. Okay, so font weight I'm going to set it to bolder, or we can keep it bold. Okay, so now let's add a margin top. So margin top I'll add 20 pixels. Awesome. Let's do 25 pixels. Okay. So now let's add the options for the others. I'm just going to copy this. So this is going to be lowercase. So I'm going to keep this as lowercase. So you should see there's an include lowercase button here. Let me keep this to as a side for now. Include lowercase button. Now let's add the other button. Include numbers. Okay. Next one is going to be include symbols. Okay, so now I need a button here to click on generate. So I'm going to create a button here. Generate. So it's a generate button. We'll style it and bring it here. So I'll give this button a class name. As gen button. So now let's go style this button. I'm going to the index.css file. So let's style the gen button. So this one, height is set to 25 pixels. Let's see, 45 pixels. Okay. So height is set to, okay, let me make it back to 25 pixels. Okay, I think this height is pretty good. So I'm going to change the text color to white. Okay, and font weight to bold. Okay, and background color to a lighter color. So now I'm going to remove the border. Set the border to 0. Next I'll do margin top to 40 pixels. Okay, that's too much. Let's change it to 30 pixels. So margin left, I'll set it to 200 pixels. So let's set a width as well. 50 pixels. Okay, let's do 150 pixels. So margin left, I will change this to 150. Okay, so going back to the text box, let us going back to the text box, password text, this one, I'm going to change the background color to light and change this color do a darker shade. Okay, so password text, I will remove the border. Okay, that looks good. 46. Okay. So the text inside this is in black and it's too small, so I want to make that big. So color is white. So the color is now white. Font size larger. So that's pretty decent. So I'm okay with this size. Oh, let's see what large is like. Okay. So now that messed up with this area. So let's see how to fix that. So password copy. Height, width, padding bottom. Let's see what it does if I make this 10. Let's make this 0. Okay, so I'll remove the padding bottom. Okay, so now this is correct. Okay, so now I don't want this to be so big, so I'm going to make this smaller. So let's go to the password link. This is the text input. I'll give this a class. And I'll put len text. This is the password link text. So let's go and style this one. Width to 50 pixels. I didn't save this. Let me save this one. Okay, so width to 50 pixels. This looks good. So now we are done with the designing part. So let's do the JavaScript part. Okay, so I'm going to change the body's background color to white. Okay, so now this looks neat, I guess so. Anyways, it's like up to you guys, like how you want to have it. So now we're done with the designing part. So now let's do the JavaScript part. So now the JavaScript is already connected to the HTML and the index.css files. Okay, so first let us create the characters that go into the uppercase, the lowercase, the numbers and the symbol. For that I'm going to declare variables, separate variables. So let uppercase is equal to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. So the uppercase will include all of these characters. Let lowercase is equal to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Let numbers equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Let symbols is equal to, let me add in all the symbols that I want to. Okay. So I created variables with all the symbols. Now let's create a function. So what this function is going to do is it's going to check which of these options are selected. Okay, so now let's do that. So let generate. I'm going to create a function named generate password. Okay, so I've created the function. So now within this function, so when this function is called, what activity should it do? So I'm going to use if conditions. If okay, so I'm going to give the checkboxes an ID so that they are unique and I can track them. So this is the first checkbox. So here I'm going to give it an ID is equal to upper. I can go to index.css, go to index.js and document dot get element by ID. Now we're getting these elements by ID, and then I'm going to enter the ID value inside. Dot checked is equal to true. So if this is true, then click on console log checked. Okay, else console.log not checked. Okay, so when I click on generate, it should call this function generate password. So let me go find the generate button. So the generate button is here. So within this one, I'm going to type in on click. So on click and the function name. So when I click, this function will be called. So now let's see. It is showing us not checked. Now let me check this one. Now it's showing us checked. So this function is working properly without an issue. So now let's do the same for the other options. This will be lowercase. This one will be numbers. And this one will be symbols. So these IDs, for the lowercase checkbox, I'm going to give an ID of lowercase. For the numbers, I'm going to give it an ID of numbers, and for the symbols, I'm going to give it an ID that is equal to symbols. Okay, so now let's check if all these options are working properly. So I'm going to check all these options and click on generate. It's saying checked and checked. Now it should show 2 checked and 2 as unchecked. Checked, unchecked. Okay, so now this is working perfectly. Okay, so now I'm going to create another variable. Let permitted. Okay, let's say let permitted characters. Let permitted characters is equal to blank. let permitted characters is equal to blank, and below this I will say let generated password is equal to blank. So now I'm creating blank variables that would store the password once it's generated, and this permitted characters is going to like have the characters that are permitted. Like if the uppercase is selected, it will have the uppercase values. If the lowercase is selected, it will have the lowercase values. If both upper and lowercase is selected, it will have both the upper and lowercase values. So now let's make that part. So instead of console log dot checked, this is for the uppercase. So if the uppercase is true, if it is checked, I want it to permitted characters is equal to permitted characters plus equal to, which means the value that is already in permitted characters plus equal to uppercase values. Uppercase. So what this is going to do is it's going to store the values that are in permitted characters plus it's going to retain the values that are in permitted characters plus add the value, the uppercase value into the permitted characters. Okay, so done. Similar way, we're going to do the same thing here. I'll just copy paste this one. But here the only thing is permitted case is going to be lowercase. And here it's going to be numbers. And here it's going to be symbols. Okay, so once this is done, let us console log this and see. Console.log permitted characters. Okay, so now let's select this one, click on generate. It's saying these are the permitted characters. So now when I select these two options, it's saying these. Okay, so now what's happening is it's already having a permitted character in it. Now it's replacing it. So what I should do here is I will put permitted characters is equal to blank. So what this will do is like each time this function is called, it will refresh, it will clear the data that is in the permitted characters. Like in the previous run of the permitted data had some values, it will be refreshed and it will become 0. It will have no values. So then the latest values will be updated into it later on. So I'll save this. Now let's try. Include upper characters means it will only have upper character values. Now see, I want upper characters and numbers. It has upper characters and numbers. Now let's say I only want numbers and symbols. Now it's got numbers and symbols. Okay, so now this part is working good. Okay, so now this part is working good. Okay, so now let's create another. Okay, now before we create another function, I want the generated password to be stored in the generated password text. So how do I do that? Let's see. So now let's generate the password. So far we haven't generated the password. You only checked like what characters can be put in characters can be used to generate the password. Okay, so now let's go ahead and generate the password. Now to generate the password, the user is going to give in a value. He's going to say I want a password with 20 characters or 30 characters. So we have to fetch that value. So we need the ID value for this element. So let's go to index.html. So the password linked is here, class, look for the ID. And I'm going to get the ID value from, I'm going to give it an ID value. Let's give it as an link text. I'll use the same thing. Okay, so I've given it an ID of link text. Okay, so I'll give document dot get element by ID, and the ID is lentest dot value. So now let length let character length, let's do character, let character length is equal to document dot get element by length, and then we want the you get element by ID, and then this is the ID link text and the value that's inside that ID. Okay, now this value that comes in will be in the format of a string. We want a number value. Okay, so we are going to change this one to number. So I'm going to use a number function. So now this will be saved as a number in character length. Okay. So we got character length. We are making the permitted characters to 0. So each time the user clicks on generate, the permitted characters will be refreshed. Okay. So now we got all of these values. We're able to check whichever options are checked by the user. We're able to get the input value, like the length of the password the user wants. So now I'm going below here. Okay, so now let's create the copy function. We'll do at last. So now we have to, once the password gets generated, we want the password to be stored in here. So now still we haven't generated the password, so let's go ahead and generate the password. So I'm going to use a for loop for this. For let I is equal to 1, I is lesser than or equal to, I is lesser than or equal to the character length. Okay, so we are saying if it is 20, we want I to be, when we only want 20 characters, right? So we have to limit it to 20 characters. So I is lesser than or equal to character length, I plus plus. So this will increment i's value by 1 each time. Okay, so our loop is ready. So now we are going to generate the password. So how we are going to generate the password is, now we already have the permitted characters stored in the permitted character variable. Now we have to randomly select randomly select characters from the permitted character variable. So now let's generate a random number. Okay. So for this, rand number, let rand number, and creating a variable called rand number. Now we have to generate a random number. So now we are going to use the math class. Okay, so now we are going to use the math.random. So now this will generate a random number between 0 and 1. So now this will generate a random number. So now I want that multiplied by permitted characters dot length. So now when this one is multiplied by the permitted characters length, say that the permitted characters length is 20, for example. Let's say the permitted character length is 20. So I'll give you a demo here. So when you use this math.random, so this will give me a random number between 0 and 1. Now say I want a random number between 0 and 20. Simple as math.random into 20. Now this will give me a random number between 0 and 20. Now we have some decimal values. We don't want the decimal values. For that we can use something like, one second, let me copy this one. You can use the math.ceil. So inside math.ceil you can give this value. So this will give you it'll give you like values like this, like 20. This is actually math.ceil rounds up the value upper. So if it is like 20.56 something, it will round it to 21. If it's 18.567, it will round it to 19. Similar way, if you use the flow method, if it's 18.567, it will round it to 18. Okay, so you can, these are the math functions. So I will make another video in the future explaining all these functions. Okay, so now let's do this. So I got math.random into the permitted number, into the permitted characters linked. So it will give me a random value between that. So now whichever value it's given, it will give me, like say the permitted value has 20 characters and now it's given me the value 10. It will pick the 10th character and I want to store it in the generated password. Okay, so now let's see. Generated password is equal to permitted characters dot character at random number. So okay, I want to create generated character. Now if I do generated password is equal to character, so each time when it refreshes it will store just that particular character. Now if it's 10, the 10th character will be stored, and then next time it generates 20, the 20th character will be stored. Okay, but now what I have to do is I have to do plus equal to. So when I do plus equal to 2, when the second value is generated, it will not replace the first value. It will add it along with the first value. So I'm going to use plus equal to. So once this one is done, let's console .log generated password. Generated password. Okay, so now let's try this out. I want uppercase and numbers. I click on generate. Okay, so there's an error here. So let's do math.ceil. Okay, now what actually the error is? Let character length. Okay, permitted characters. Okay, it's say 20. Okay. Wait, I'm actually console logging the. Oh, okay. I'm consoling the function. It is supposed to be generated password, not generate password. Okay, so now let's see. Say okay, saying the permitted characters are so and so, but the generated password is not. That's not generating a password. Okay, so now let's check what the problem here is. Okay, here it's supposed to be generated password again. Okay, now let's save this. Okay, now let's say 20 characters. I want uppercase and numbers. Generate. Unquoted, generated password is not defined. Generated password is equal to. Okay, generated password is equal to. Again a mistake. And generated password. Okay. Generated password is equal to generated password. Save. Now let's check 10 characters, numbers and symbols. Okay, so now it's generated the password with numbers and symbols. Now let's say I want to include all of these and generate. So it's generating a character. So Okay, but now it's having the previous generated character plus the latest one. Okay, now let's check why that has happened. Okay, so now generated password should also be cleared. So I will say generated password is equal to blank. Okay, let's try now. I want 10 characters. I want uppercase and numbers generate. Okay, I got uppercase and numbers. Okay, so I want to include symbols this time. So I got uppercase. Okay, so it's generating passwords each time I'm getting a new password. Let's try this one also. So it's giving me up. It's generating a unique password each time. Okay, so now I want the generated password to show up in here. So let's go back here. Index.html. So this is the password text. So this was the text box for this one. So I want this password, the generated password, to show up in here. So let's copy. So I'll do ID as GenP. Okay, I got the ID as GenP. Now let me go here. Document dot get element by ID. I'll give it the ID, which is GenP. Dot inner text is equal to generated password. Okay, so now let's say I want 20. I want uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols generate. Okay, but the password is not generated. Okay, oops, it should be value. Oops, okay, my bad. So let's say 20. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Click generate. Did 20. This one, this one, this. Let's say 20. Generate. Okay, see the new password is generated each time. You can see that the new password is there. Okay, so I'm able to generate the password. So now let me save this one. Okay, so now we're able to generate a password. Now when I click on this copy button, I want the password that is generated here to be moved to the clipboard so that I can go and paste the password somewhere else. Okay, for this now I'll create a new function. Let CPY do clip. Okay, I'm creating a function copy to clipboard is equal to. Okay, so I've created a function called copy to clip. So now I will say navigator dot navigator dot clipboard dot write text. So what I want to write in that, so I want to write the generated password. So now I'll go to index. I have to go to this button. So this is the button. I'll do an on click here. So on click, call this function. Okay, so now let's test our tool. It's completely ready. I want 10 characters. I want it to include uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols. Click generate. I got uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols. This is the new password that is generated. Now I want to copy this password. I can just click on copy. Okay, so here is the final output. So the password length is 20 characters. I want uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols. I click on generate. The password got generated. Now I'll copy the password to the clipboard. Password copy to clipboard. Okay. Now let me paste the password. Okay, so I was able to paste the password as well. Okay. So this is the complete code, the HTML part, the JavaScript part, and the CSS part.